That's Afro Showbiz News, Saturdays 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. A warm welcome here from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. The show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are repeated at 2 in the afternoon if you missed the morning. And there's also a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube between 9 and 10 every weekday morning with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all of the time, which means you can watch it anywhere, anytime, anywhere in the world. Of course, today we look at the run into the elections here in South Africa after the opposition launched their election manifesto yesterday. Online safety continues to be a concern for many consumers, and we'll look at that a little bit later. And we also look at the Morula Festival that took part in the northern parts of South Africa over the weekend. But first, here are the news headlines. Czech businessman Radovan Krecher and his 4 co-accused are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Regional Court in Gauteng today. Krecher is expected to appear alongside 2 members of the Hawks, warrant officers Samuel Mudisi Maripeng and George Jeff Ntorwane. The other 2 accused are Sibonisa Mia and Santon businessman Desai Lupondo. They face charges of kidnapping, assault and attempted murder relating to an alleged drug deal that went wrong. 2 teenage boys arrested in connection with the murder of 2 Soweto schoolgirls last week will appear in the Protea Magistrates Court today. The boys, both aged 16, were arrested on Thursday at a high school in Soweto. And in cricket, South African fast bowler Dale Steyn took 3 wickets for 9 runs in a 4-over spell to vault the Proteas to a 231-run victory over Australia in the second test at St George's Park in Port Elizabeth yesterday. Steyn returned figures of 4 for 55 at the end of the match to level the 3-match series at 1-1. Australia were bowled out for a paltry 216 in the 4th innings of that match. Yesterday, DA leader Helen Zille and the DA's national leadership officially launched the DA's 2014 election manifesto in Polokwane in Limpopo. The DA outlined its vision for South Africa and its policy to offer the voters in the upcoming election. It was also the official launch of the DA's national election campaign. Now in studio, we are joined by Makashula Ghana, a deputy federal chairperson of the DA. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Eben, and morning to the viewers.
Interesting that you chose to be in Limpopo yesterday for the big launch. What was the thinking behind that?
The DA is a party that's growing in all communities. Our support can be found everywhere in the country. And going to Limpopo was to show that we are not only confined to Gauteng or the Western Cape, but our support, and we can mobilize support in all provinces that we choose to go to. So our support is not confined on the big 2 provinces, but Limpopo as well, we do have massive support.
Big focus of your launch yesterday was jobs and the creation of jobs in South Africa. Yeah. The main plan being to root out corruption and use that as a platform to create jobs. But what is the plan? How do you root out corruption?
I think the important thing is to strengthen the oversight committees on that and to fire or ban corrupt officials and politicians from ever holding office. Because if you are not showing that you are seriously dealing with corrupt individuals, then even those ones that have intentions, they will continue doing it because they don't fear being caught. So strengthening those oversight committees and strengthening the police as well to ensure that matters of corruption are investigated speedily, and those who are found guilty, they never return to work for the state. It will assist us in dealing with the corrupt practices in the civil service.
It's been a kind of tumultuous start for the DA this year. It's been there've been marches that some people say have gone wrong. There've been mergers that haven't been, in the best interest of the party, some analysts say. Which leads us to the sort of big statement that's come out, the rent-a-black. Rent-a-black is the buzzword that's gone on in the last couple of months when they spoke about the DA. Your experience as a black leader within the DA, do you see yourself as a rent-a-black?
No, I have never seen myself as someone who's rented. I joined the DA 11 years ago out of my own will. So no one came to me and said, Ghana, please come to the DA. I went to the DA. The DA never came to me. A lot of DA members and supporters who are black, I interact with them on a daily basis, and no one says, I'm here because someone promised to give me something, give me a job or something. They come in there because they see the DA as their home, the DA that is ready and willing to serve the interest of all South Africans.
What was the response of the black leadership within the party when someone from another party outside of the party was brought in as the sort of black face of the election? Well, how did that make you feel?
No, one must understand what we intend to do as an organization, which is to realign politics. If we have an organization that we believe we share a lot of similarities, then we initiate conversation with that organization, and we try to bring the organizations together. And that's what we intended to do with Akang. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and that, as leadership of the DA, we take responsibility for that. As a member of the Federal Executive, I was part of that decision, and I must take full responsibility for that. Other conversation with other political parties, ID being an example of that, went very well. But on this particular case, it didn't work out. But we have learned our lessons, and we became stronger out of the whole experience.
Another controversial matter that popped up was the march on Luthuli House a couple of weeks ago. It left the DA with another blight on its mark, sort of, where a lot of social media comments that came out was that the DA used black people to march on the ANC. There were very few white faces that marched on the ANC's headquarters. Why was that the case?
What we have is members of the DA taking ownership of the initiatives that we're starting as a DA. We are not going to sit there and say how many black people must attend our activities, how many white people must attend our activities. The members that you saw on that day are full-fledged members of the DA, that they felt a need, because many of them are unemployed, that they felt a need that this is an issue that we need to highlight. We did not rent anyone to go in there, and we're not using anyone. I was there myself, and I don't feel, I've never felt used
on our social media pages.
Yes.
We had a lot of comments come in that week, and this is simply a question that came out from what was on the social media pages and what people were talking about. The question to ask was, where were the white DA supporters when they marched on the ANC headquarters?
The white DA supporters were there. I was there myself. The DA is growing. The DA is growing in all communities, particularly in the black communities. So if we only had white supporters marching on Luthuli, your social media page will have said, the DA is a lily white organization. Yeah. There are no black people there. The only black people is Ghana or Kume or Musi. Those are the only black faces there. Yeah. But then we mobilize communities, we mobilize supporters from all walks of life. Then people complain to say there were not enough Indians there, therefore Indians don't support. So it's a game that one will never win.
Yeah. The election. Let's move on to the election.
Yes.
It's going to be a very a tough election. It's going to be very hardly and closely contested. How do you intend to move past the 30% barrier? And the question really is, what is the promise to the black voters, and how is the DA going to make the step up and win over the black voters without the feeling that they patronize black people in South Africa?
Our offer is not only to black voters. We are offering solutions to challenges that confront all South Africans. It doesn't matter which background you come from. We the solutions that we have presented to South Africa yesterday, it caters for everyone who's in this country, because South Africa belongs to all of us. It's not South Africa for a certain group or that group. So the important thing is that we need to understand that the challenge that faces us as a country, it's unemployment and poverty. And one way of dealing with that is to ensure that people who are of a working age do go out there and work. And as a government in waiting, we want to create an environment that will ensure that we create many jobs that will absorb many unemployed people of our country.
Is your party still looking for a black leader, or were they never looking for a black leader?
We have leaders from all walks of life. You can look at me now. I'm as black as they come, unless you are saying I'm not black enough. So
that's a sense that came from within the party, that men like yourself are not black enough or not good enough, because you were looking on the outside for this leadership in the run-up to the election. We
always looking for leadership. Doesn't matter whether you are black, you're a woman, you are colored. It doesn't, because this South Africa needs all of us to work together, and we're trying to bring together leaders from all walks of life. And this thing of saying we want black leaders, I was elected by Congress, and I'm one of the senior leaders in the organization.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure it's a discussion that will continue until Election Day on May the 7th. But thank you for joining us in the Newsroom studio this morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.
That is the DA's Deputy Federal Chairperson, Marula Ghana, joining us this morning. And also launching its election manifesto yesterday was the United Christian Democratic Party. The event was held at Mahikeng in the northwest.
A puzzling tribute to the Bophuthatswana homeland, largely reviled as an apartheid creation. The homelands were poorly managed and inherently corrupt. Yet the UCDP says the economy at the time was thriving. The party says youth unemployment is a critical problem.
We'll take a leaf from, as I said, your Zimbabwe. We'll take a leaf from, as I said, from your Tanzania, where they have youth ministries.
The UCDP wants to create 4 million jobs in 5 years. It wants the creation of a central tender board. The party says police must be duty conscious and not trigger happy. It wants in-service training for teachers.
What I like the most, especially when the president has presented his speech, is when they say they are going to help us, we as youth, to improve ourselves in studying.
The party, started by former Bophuthatswana leader Lucas Mangope, has seen its fortune decline in recent years. Tsholofelo Mathibedi, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Well, let's take a quick look at what you are talking about on social media on this Monday morning. Saloshni Pele says, DA manifesto to focus on job creation, economy. We don't want talk, we want action. Stimulate the economy to create jobs, she says. Mandy Duval says, in my face-off between the DA and EFF manifestos, the DA wins. At least DA manifesto makes some sense. The EFF's delusional. Ronnie McKenzie says the DA's manifesto should be the funniest of all. Going to a province that speaks Sepedi, Savannah and Setsonga and addressing in English and Zulu. Daniel Soki says democracy wins this weekend in South Africa with major manifesto rallies from the DA, EFF plus ANC campaigning happening peacefully. Yes, indeed, it was a peaceful weekend. Keep it coming. Those are your comments coming in on social media, Twitter page at SABC and SABC News Online at SABC Newsroom. It's on this very show. sabc.co.za/news. That's where you get all the updates all of the time. After a short break, we're going to take a look at online safety. That should be quite interesting. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. The internet has transformed how we communicate and socialize. It provides a wider range of opportunities in terms of communicating, entertainment, information, as well as creating content. However, like any medium for communication and interaction, it also has some inherent risks. Poor knowledge of online safety and security can lead to financial and emotional losses, as fraudsters are always prowling on the web for their next victim. In studio today, we are joined by Sizwe Snail Kamtuzi, a lawyer at Snail Attorneys, or partner at Snail Attorneys. And in our Pretoria studio this morning, we have Professor Almani Kritzinger from UNISA's School of Computing to talk to us about risks and safety measures. Good morning to both of you.
Hi, good morning.
I want to start with Professor Kritzinger in Pretoria. Let's start with, I think, one of the most crucial ones, which is online child safety. What are the risks at the moment, and what are the best practices that you come across to keep your child safe?
Yes, good morning from my side. Thank you for giving the opportunity to join you here today. This is a very vital topic that must be discussed, not only with parents and teachers, but also with children. Yes, because technology is everywhere today. I just usually start to say, your cell phone that you have has got more power than they used to land on the moon. So everyday technology is more and more available. And in a survey we've done last year, it says more than 90% of our children's got cell phones these days. And most of them is internet connectivity. And it's up to the parents to teach the children to use it safely, because as you said, there's so many online risks these days. Yeah. In the survey that we said is more than 60% of our children, there's no parent supervision. They do not check what the children are doing. Yeah. And this can lead, as you said, to a lot of risk and online bullying, cyber stalking, and a number of cyber threats.
The one you mentioned is online bullying, and see if I can bring you in here. Parents, they always feel powerless when they deal with the internet, I think, in a way. I think it's part of the technology age, is that you are disconnected in a way from your real interactions with people. But if you're bullied online, or your child is bullied online, what sort of recourse do you have as a parent?
Well, usually online bullying comes in various forms. You will find that sometimes it's the social circle of your child, and then sometimes there maybe you can intervene, maybe contact the school, or contact the other parents of the bullying party. In the event where obviously maybe you don't know the bullying party, then you can seek recourse. You can either report the matter to the SAPS, or in terms of the Harassment Act now, you could go to a local magistrate court and get an order basically prohibiting that person from harassing you. But obviously if you don't know the person, then that's a problem.
You talk about the Harassment Act. Is this new or not new? Has it been updated to deal with the new kind of technology world we live in?
Yes, the Harassment Act came last year, and it's basically been designed to deal with all forms of harassment, not just harassment in the ordinary sense as we know it, where someone could be physically harassing you or coming to your workplace or to your home. We're talking about now harassment electronically by means of SMSs, by means of social media and other forms.
Professor, if I can bring you in here, there seems to be a lot of online scams going on at the moment. I mean, I get either text or Facebook messages or whatever that, you know, some relative of mine died in some faraway place, and that if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll get 150,000 Rand. Is there a way to spot a scam, and how do you stay away from these scams, and how do you keep them out of your space, really?
I think as technology grows, the scams will be there. As soon as you close the door, another scam will pop up. I think the first thing is that we can tell the viewers there is, and this is linking with the cyberbullying, is educate yourself, make yourself aware of the online environment. I think a lot of the users these days use online banking and online dating sites and social media, but they do not understand the basic rules behind it. So I would say first is make yourself aware. In the case of the cyberbullying, just going back, is the first thing is that parents can just talk to their children and make them aware that something can happen, and leave it open that if something happens, the children can talk to the parents. So make yourself aware of scams.
Yeah.
If you have got this email, you've won $100,000, it's usually scam. So think twice before you act. Think 3 times before you provide personal information. It's the same rules that we have in our everyday life. You will not give out your information to a stranger that you met in the mall.
Yeah.
Exactly the same online. Be vigilant, make sure you understand the rules, and then you'll spot these scams from a mile away.
Sizwe, just tell us, has there been any sort of landmark cases around scamsters being found out in this country or anywhere on the continent?
Well, 419 scams, as they call them, you know, they've been everywhere around the world, actually.
Yeah.
Not just here in South Africa and not just in Nigeria, as everyone tries to stigmatize them. They're everywhere. And yes, sometimes people do get netted. Sometimes the big syndicates do get caught out. But in many instances, they don't get caught out.
Yeah.
What I always say to people is that scams have always been there. The fact that now we're using an electronic medium to do these scams doesn't change the fact that scams are there.
Yeah.
People actually thrive on people's gullibility and desperation, for instance, for employment or having won a prize, you know.
Yeah.
It's that typical newspaper ad where they say, send us X amount of Rand and we'll guarantee you a job. And then they send you a magazine on how to make money.
Absolutely. Professor, you've got 30 seconds to give advice to our viewers and tell us, how do you keep personal information safe from hackers online?
I would first say is post the minimum information out there. Think twice before you say anything about your financial situation, your bank account details. Just keep it to a minimum and try to be safe.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. That's Professor Almarie Kritzinger from UNISA School of Computing, giving us a little bit of an insight. Caesar, before I let you go, there are a lot of threats online, you know, being it to your safety or to your money. Just quickly, 30 seconds, give us a final word. What do you do if you feel threatened online?
Well, if you feel threatened online, then I guess you need to secure yourself, as the professor just said. You need to limit the type of information that you put out there, be it your personal information, be it information that can connect you to where you are and what you're doing at that time.
Yeah.
You know, the typical Facebook thing, I am at a place.
Yeah.
And then obviously they're going to go and break into your place because they know you're not there.
Yeah.
So, you know, one must just be aware that whatever you put out there is there. And people can use that to get to your personal information.
In the age of self-obsession, Sizwe, that is a very difficult thing to do. But thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's Sizwe Snail, who is a partner at Snail Attorneys. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
We move on. Kenya is surging ahead with technology And the Eastern African country is set to abolish the use of cash in paying for bus fare. Instead, public taxi or matatu operators, as the taxis are known in Kenya, will have to use prepaid plastic cards or mobile money. Mobile money seems to be on the fast track as the preferred method for bus fare payment. Now, from Kenya, we're joined by Sarah Kimani. She went to see how this will work and how it will change travelling in Kenya. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning.
Sarah, just tell us, how is this system going to work in Kenya?
Well, what it means is that every time somebody is traveling on public taxi, they will not have to use money. Instead, they will have to pay through their phones, or they will have a plastic card which are connected to Google, through the Google Pay method. So what happens is, take for example, the telecommunications company will have special accounts for each public transport vehicle or for each public transport company. And so once you get to the place where you're going, then you pay through the phone, something that has actually been tested in other products that people are able to buy through the phone here in Kenya.
And tell us about the initial response to this. What are the people saying?
Well, a lot of those people who are already trying it is the people who have to do long-distance travel. One of the reasons is because they have to pay more money than a trip probably from one mall to another, from one stop to another. And so the ones who are doing long-distance travel like it because then they don't have to carry a lot of money in their purses or in their wallets or in their hands. And also the public transport companies like it because they don't have to handle a lot of cash in their offices or in the areas where they have their public transport bus stops.
Now, Sarah, this is something that the banks, I'm sure, have tried in your country as well as here by us for a long time. How is this system going to be different and work?
Well, the reason why it's different is because for the longest time, public transport vehicles have use their cash. And also, for many people, what they're saying is, take for example, when you train, you don't have fixed bus fares for different routes. So when you train and there's a lot of, traffic jam, a public transport operator decides to increase the fares just on the spot. Sometimes you don't have enough money. What this will do is, because sometimes you will have paid your trip long before you travel, it means then that you will not be met with those shock fare increases, and also you're assured that your vehicle will come at the time that it is supposed to for your transport. So in a way, it's going to streamline public transportation in the country.
And what about the Kenya revenue authorities? Are they partnering in this project, and will they get a direct fee from it as well?
Well, they may not be partnering, but what happens is because all business people and anybody who's earning an income should file tax returns, then it will be very easy for them to be able to track down if indeed what somebody is saying they received in terms of collections for bus fares is what they really do. Because usually what happens is there are no tickets. So you get into a bus, you pay your little money, and you go. But in this case, because there is a printout that will come from the telecommunications company, the Kenya Revenue Authority will be able to track the collection. And so when they're asking for tax returns, then they will be able to get in more money. They said that they have been losing a lot of money. The transport sector in Kenya is said to be worth about $287 million. And most of that has actually not been trickling down back to the government coffers. And this is what the Kenya Revenue Authority is trying to do now.
Sarah, finally, you mentioned the telecommunications companies. I'm sure that they'll be quite keen to cash in as well. But what other opportunities do you see exist within the country?
Well, what telecommunications companies have managed to do is they have managed to do what banks have failed to do all these years. They have increased the number of people who have access to financial services. They have even increased the chances of people who would never think of getting a medical cover being able to get. Because, take for example, there's one telecommunications company that now just says all you have to do is pay about 2 rands through the phone and you're covered medically. So they're increasing financial accessibility. They're increasing the number of people who can actually be able to borrow, because yet another company is able to open a bank account through the phone where you can save money and borrow and pay at a very little interest. And so a lot of people are growing their businesses through this when the bank loans are very expensive, and for most people who have no accounts out of reach.
Well, Sarah, thank you for that update this morning. That is our East African correspondent, Sarah Kamani, giving us an update on, well, mobile money, or the rise of mobile money in that country. Just to recap, one of our top stories today, Czech businessman Radovan Krejcir and his 4 co-accused are expected to appear in the Palm Regional Court in Gauteng today. They face charges of kidnapping, assault and attempted murder relating to an alleged drug deal that went wrong. Krejcir is expected to appear alongside 2 members of the Hawks, warrant officers Samuel Medisi Marupeng and George Jeff Ndoroane. The other 2 accused are Siboniso Mia and Santon businessman Desai Lupondo. Krejcir fled his home country about 8 years ago after being convicted of fraud and corruption. Well, let's take a quick look before we go to a break at what you are talking about on social media. Of course, earlier it was very much election manifesto, and it's still. Nisi says EFF manifesto was successful even though it's headache to others. The commissar says, with a great sense of disbelief, I listened to the EFF manifesto yesterday. My people are being taken for a ride. Make the right choice, he says. Motlatsi says EFF manifesto covers all angles, so tight, but is it sustainable? And then Tracy McKay says, so what does the EFF manifesto really tell us? That they will promise anything to get votes without any thought as to the consequences. 88 Killers of Sunshine says, your rational arguments against the EFF manifesto will not diminish the popularity of the manifesto. Well, those are some of your thoughts coming in. Keep it coming. We love interacting with you. We love your thoughts. We love to hear what you're thinking and saying. Of course, it's at SABC Newsroom. That's where you get it. It's on the red line there at the bottom. Of course, sabc.co.za/news is where you get all the news updates from all around the world throughout a 24-hour cycle, every day, 7 days a week. After a short little break, we're going to look at the Marula festival that was held in Limpopo over the weekend. If you don't know it, it's a fruit that is well favored here in the southern parts of the continent. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Your World provides trusted world, continent and local stories. We deliver breaking news from across the globe and information on the latest top stories on business, technology, politics and sport. Analysis of the big global business and economic issues as they affect consumers and investors. Make sure you don't miss Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight. We keep the nation fully informed.
Wednesday, the 26th of February, Minister Pravin Gordhan tables the 2014 budget plan to address the important areas that will make our country better. And your front row seat is on the SABC News channel, live at 2 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a quick look at your top stories. Czech businessman Radovan Krejcir and his 4 co-accused are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Regional Court in Gauteng today. Krejcir is expected to appear alongside 2 members of the Hawks, Warrant Officers Samuel Mudisi Marupeng and George Jeff Ntorwane. The other two accused are Siboniso Mia and Sandton businessman Desai Lupondo. They face charges of kidnapping, assault and attempted murder relating to an alleged drug deal that went wrong. Two teenage boys arrested in connection with the murder of two Soweto schoolgirls last week will appear in the Protea Magistrates Court today. The boys, both aged 16, were arrested on Thursday at a high school in Soweto. And in cricket, South African fast bowler Dale Steyn took 3 wickets for 9 runs in a 4-over spell to vault the Proteas to a 231-run victory over Australia in the second test. St George's Park in Port Elizabeth yesterday. Steyn returned figures of 4 for 55 at the end of the game to level the 3-match series at 1-1. Australia were bundled out for 216. Now, health in the Eastern Cape is to receive a major boost with the building of 6 new hospitals. Healthcare in the province has been thrown a R1.6 billion lifeline to fix and build new facilities. The Provincial Department of Health says the money will be used for hospital, clinics and community health centres. Janine Lee is in our Port Elizabeth studio to give us a little sense about what's going on. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning, Eben. Yes, a happy day for health in the Eastern Cape.
Yes, it is. I wanted to ask you about the weather, but you can tell me later. This is very good news for the Eastern Cape, where over the last 10, 20 years, healthcare has really been problematic, to be nice, in the province, isn't it?
Absolutely, Eben. And let me just start. There are going to be 6 hospitals. One is going to be here in Port Elizabeth. It's actually not going to be a new hospital. It's the Elizabeth Donkin State Psychiatric Hospital. It's in a terrible state of disrepair. It's here in the city in Port Elizabeth. And what they're going to do is they're going to close that one down completely and take it to Dora and Ginza Hospital. Now, Dora and Ginza is a massive hospital, but it has that very specialised burns unit. They have a fantastic paediatric section. So the psychiatric patients are going to be moved to Dora and Ginza. And I think it's going to be a great thing for them. They're going to get much better care under this sort of umbrella hospital that will now specialise in psychiatric, as it does with burns and as it does with paediatrics. So it's a great move there. And then the other 5 hospitals, Eben, are going to be in the rural areas of the Transkei. Now, these are not going to be built from scratch. What's going to happen is these hospitals, there are 5 of them, they were originally built by missionaries, and as we speak, in a very, very bad state of disrepair. So what the health department is going to do, they're going to use this money to break these hospitals down completely, build them from scratch, and obviously put a whole lot of new equipment and staffing into these hospitals. So a great thing for the rural people.
Yeah, that's very good news for the people living in those areas, Janine. But as you know, these kinds of hospitals, they need staff. And how do you attract people to go and work in those far-flung rural areas? Is there a plan for that?
Yes, there is. It's been a massive problem over the years to encourage people who have the qualifications to go and work in the rural areas. So what the health department is doing, I can actually say, which is good news, it was in the Premier's State of the Province address, 241 nurses have already been deployed to the OR Tambo district. They're going to be working there. There were 105 young medical students that were sent to Cuba. Those doctors are also going to be used. But what the department is doing that wasn't done in the past, you will know that many students got bursaries from the health department. And the conditions on these bursaries weren't enforced. And one of the conditions were that they have to spend time in the rural areas. So what the department is going to do, they're going to clamp down on these conditions and make sure these students that have received bursaries do spend their time and give their time back to the people in the rural communities. So that's going to be a positive. And also they're going to embark on a massive recruitment drive to get people, put in incentives to get them to come and work in these areas.
Now, Janine, unfortunately, mismanagement, corruption have always sort of gone hand in hand with healthcare in the Eastern Cape. Are they going to deal with these issues as well?
Eben, yes, they are. I think they're going to put in conditions and much stronger clauses in the contracts that these doctors have. So if they default on this condition, they will face the arm of the law, or whatever steps have been put in place by the health department to make sure that they have to live out the conditions that are in these contracts. So I think it's going to be a big clampdown in that department. And as they said, they want people that have got the bursaries. They need to fulfill the conditions that are in their contracts. So they're going to be strict about it.
That's a very good news and very heartening to hear, because there's always been issues with healthcare, and it always seems to be the poorest of the poor who have to pay the brunt of it. But you're also following the state of the province address there today in the Eastern Cape. Is that accurate? And what's the latest? Is there any developments there?
Yes, Eben, that was on Friday. The Premier gave her State of the Province address, but she came under criticism from the opposition parties who said she focused only on the positives. Now, let me just give you a tangible sort of example. She mentioned stuff like over the 2 years that have passed that support, teacher and pupil support learner material has increased by 100% to schools in the various areas. Now, she mentioned that, but in the Mthatha High Court on Friday, there was a ruling, it came after 2 years of being in court, that the court has ruled that the department has 90 days to provide furniture to schools in the province that have none. So it's very difficult to say, yes, you know, wonderful, we've got all this learner material out to pupils and teachers, but what's the point of having all this material and you don't have for focusing only on the positives and not necessarily dealing with all the challenges that lie in the health department, education department, and those various sectors.
And I'm sure that the election campaign trail is also now really heating up in the Eastern Cape, with all political parties really throwing their hat in the ring there. Has there been any interesting developments?
Yeah, absolutely, Eben. I had a busy weekend. I was in Graaff-Reinet and all over. Let me just quickly start with Graaff-Reinet. Not actually electioneering, but the PAC were there. This is Robert Sobukwe month. February is dedicated to him, and he comes from the Graaff-Reinet area. So members of the PAC visited his widow, Veronica. She's 87 years old. She let us into her home, and, you know, she had some wise words to say. She said, you know, her husband had fought for freedom. He had lost a lot for freedom, but freedom had been achieved, and she called on everyone. She said, you know, we have freedom, now let's unite. So there were wise words from an elderly lady there. And also we had the ANC, some of the top guns here in the metro yesterday and on Saturday. You will remember that over the last 2 months there have been terrible violent protests in the Uitenhage area. So we had the Honourable Minister Mapisa Nakula here. She's known as she's a great mediator, and trying to resolve the factions that there are in the tripartite alliance with SANCO and the ANC. Fingers have been pointed at SANCO at the SACP for inciting the violence in Uitenhage. So she was down here over the weekend to try and sort this all out ahead of the elections, and she did say to me, you know, the elections are critical, that's why I'm here, we need to sort, the metro is vitally important to the ANC, given the fact that so many of the stalwarts come from the Eastern Cape, and the metro, which is named after Nelson Mandela, they want to sort this all out before people go to the polls in May. So the ANC top brass was here over the weekend, and also yesterday we had COPE members here. We had Deputy President Willie Madisha. He was here. He was going door to door in the various disadvantaged communities, handing out T-shirts, obviously saying, "Come on, people, let's vote for COPE. Let's vote for change." And that's not the last of the leaders we'll see. I think as we get closer to election date, we're going to see a lot of heads of parties coming to the Metro and to the Eastern Cape.
Now to the really important matter that I think the whole of South Africa today are really interested in is it raining in Port Elizabeth today? You know, they made such a big thing about the test match having to finish there yesterday so quickly. Is it raining today?
It is. We woke up to rain this morning, but we're very dry, so it's most welcome. But we're just glad that the cricket got wrapped up yesterday, and we didn't have to draw it out today. But even before I let you go, I want to actually say this to you. Know, earlier you were talking about the scams, and I would hate you to be caught in a scam. So I've got some great advice for you, and it goes like this: if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
and quickly, I heard that you've also secured a Boxing Day test match for Port Elizabeth. That must be a great coup, and I'm sure the people there must be very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Given the history that that goes with St. George's Park, and it's wonderful to have that, particularly over a time when people are on leave and they don't have to go to work. So hopefully, I mean, it's very important, you know, for South Africans and the whole of South African cricket, for us to fill stadiums, to retain Test cricket. So it comes at a time, I think, where there will be a lot of bums on seats, and you know, people love cricket here in the Eastern Cape and in Port Elizabeth, and St. George's is such a special venue.
Thank you very much, Janine, for giving us a complete wrap of what's going on in the Eastern Cape this morning. We now go to the north of the country, where the Limpopo Department of Economic Development, Environment and Tourism Affairs is proud of products made from the indigenous Marula fruit that is being sold on the international market. Cooperatives formed by women in Phalaborwa produce the Marula drink and other products from the fruit. The department hosted the annual Marula Festival in Phalaborwa over the past weekend. And now Moses Ngubeni from the Department of Economic Development joins us in our Polokwane studio. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and how are you?
Very, very well today. So just tell us, how did the Marula Festival go this weekend?
It went very well. I mean, that was the start of the 7 days event that is taking place from the 22nd, which was last week Saturday, and it will end on the 1st of March in Phalaborwa.
Now, I saw earlier that they formed a cooperative by women in Phalaborwa who are really doing good business with Marula fruit. Can you tell us about this cooperative and how does it work?
Yeah, you know, as a Department of Economic Development, Environment and Tourism, in 2006 we realized that as a province we are blessed with this abundance of Marula fruits throughout the province. And we realized that if we can do something, you know, economically, it's going to benefit the rural communities where you find a lot of these trees and the fruit in abundance. And that's when we came with this initiative. This is an economic intervention that we have made. We have established 13 cooperatives to date. When we started, we had 5, and it grew year by year. And this year, Marula Festival, it's in its 9th year, and next year is going to be 10 years. So we have got 13 cooperatives that are benefiting directly. Now, they've started working on byproducts that are sold in the market. You know, we've got soap, we've got the oil, which is good for the skin. And in Phalaborwa, through the assistance of Phalaborwa Foundation, we have established 3 cooperatives plus 1 secondary cooperative that looks at the extraction of oil just from the nuts of the Marula nut. So, and this is growing, you know. Other than that, we've got juice, we've got the pulp, which we use for juice, which we use for various products as well, including the Amarula liqueur. And now we are also going to use the skin of the Marula fruit itself, you know, to dry it up like your dried mango, so it will be in the market as soon as possible. And we receive some assistance from the Department of Science and Technology. They are working on that as to how can we get these women into the formal industry where they will also bottle this Amarula traditional drink for a particular period. So this is a good thing for us as a province in terms of making an economic intervention within the rural communities.
And I'm sure you're looking at international marketing and so forth. Which international markets are you looking for the products to be sold onto? Or which ones are showing interest?
Like this year, you know, currently the women who are extracting oil, we've got a company in Italy that is buying the oil. But the problem now it's supply. They need bulk supply. And that is the reason why we have identified a spot in Phalaborwa where we want to develop a big industry. And because Phalaborwa is strategically located, it's bordered by Mozambique and Zimbabwe, and also we're not far from Swaziland, we're not far from Botswana. And we've got agreements with these countries to say, as soon as there is a lot of demand, we need also to be able to supply. And this year, there's a company also coming from the USA that is interested in buying the oil. And because the oil, it's very good for the skin and it's in demand. So those are some of the markets that we have. But we've got collaboration with our neighboring countries. And they are also coming, they are bringing their products that already are developed in the market to come and sell as well.
Thank you for joining us today. We've run out of time, but we wish you all the best with this project. It's helping a lot of people in rural communities to earn a living. That is Moses Ngubeni from the Department of Economic Development joining us in our studio in Polokwane. Quick final look at what you're passionate about on social media, what you're talking about. I'm sure it's cricket. Gordon von Scott says, weekend of fascinating test match cricket. Well done, SA team, and best of luck for Cape Town. That's the sentiments of a nation right now. I am Velap, he says. Dale Stoney is simple, the best in this era, making that ball do the talking. We're lucky to have him in this country. We're talking about reverse swing yesterday. Australia lost 9 for 64 in 30 overs in the final session. Luckily, most Australian cricket fans were sleeping and missed the carnage. That must be from Australia and Adam White. Professor Matthew Lester says, it's chucking down rain here in the Eastern Cape. If the Proteas hadn't finished off the Aussie yesterday, it would have been a draw. Yep, divine intervention. That's what it was. That's what it was like yesterday. So, the good news for South African cricket fans, it's raining in PE today, and we managed to win the test match last night. Well, if you didn't, it would have been a real nightmare today, as it's raining buckets down in the Eastern Cape at the moment. That's where we wrap it. This show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are then repeated at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. every day, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all of the time. So, you have no excuses for not watching this show anywhere in the world, anytime. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.